Today's discussion of personality is all about the humanists. So I want you to think back to the beginning of the year. What do you remember about the humanists? What do you remember about Abraham Maslow, for example? Hopefully, you're thinking of words like free will and potential and growth because in the beginning of the year, we learned that this approach is very centered on each individual person having the free will and therefore having the agency to bring about change in their lives and to grow and to reach their fullest potential. So, right now, we're going to talk about two humanistic theories, those of Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. So, we'll start off with Abraham Maslow. I'd like for you to actually pause, look away from the screen for a second, and in your notebook, fill in that little box that's asking you to recall your prior knowledge about Maslow. Just kind of spit out everything you remember about Maslow there. Hopefully, you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The idea that individuals are first motivated to fulfill their most basic physiological needs, like food and water and sex, and then they'll move up the pyramid to pursue higher needs, like safety needs and their needs for love and belonging, their needs for esteem, to feel good about themselves, to have confidence, to have the respect of other people. The ultimate goal, Maslow said, is that individuals become self actualized. So, a self actualized person is an individual who knows themselves, who knows their interests, knows their strengths, and goes off and pursues those strengths. Even above and beyond that, something Maslow wrote about was this idea of self transcendence, that once an individual is self actualized, then they're able to transcend beyond themselves and find meaning and purpose even within a community. He said that self actualized people experience these moments of pure joy and pure elation that he referred to as peak experiences. He said these are like spiritual things that people experience, or spiritual awakening, so to speak, where they increase the person's personal awareness. And I really like this quote by Maslow. Mature adult qualities found in those who have learned enough about life to be compassionate, to have outgrown their mixed feelings towards their parents, to have found their calling, to have acquired enough courage to be unpopular, to be unashamed about being openly virtuous. I just want you to think about that for a second. Then individuals acquired enough courage to be unpopular, right? To be the person who knows what their values are, who knows, intrinsically what they believe to be right and wrong, and is not afraid or ashamed to be open about that. Carl Rogers is one of the other founding humanists that we learn about in AP psychology, and also whose theory we're going to see in a second is really ingrained into a lot of different types of psychotherapies that are used in treatment. But Carl Rogers' notion of a fully functioning person is essentially a person who has a healthy personality. Rogers says that we seek approval from other people. We seek not only their approval, but we seek their acceptance, their unconditional acceptance, meaning they accept us no matter what. That we will compare our views of ourselves with other people's views of us. And we'll look to see, is there a congruence? In other words, is the me that I want to be, the ideal self, he called it, the same as the real self that I'm showing the world? Is the me who I want to be the me that other people see? The goal, Roger said, is for there to be a congruence, that the real self and the ideal self match up. And he says these are things that influence the development of a person's personality. So every healthy, self-actualizing individual, as Roger said, is someone whose self-concept is positive and, again, congruent with reality. The person they want to be is the person who they are, the person who they're showing to other people. And he also talked about something called our phenomenal field, which is really just our subjective awareness of everything that happens around us, right? We all have our own lens through which we see the world. Just look at this, for example, right? You might have two people and each gets a C on a test, and they might have two very different views about what that C is. One person who's really struggled throughout their time in school might see that C and be elated that they have a C, whereas someone else who's used to getting A's might look at that C and be incredibly disappointed. No one is better than the other. It's just an example of these very subjective experiences and feelings that we have. And again, just to hit home again, this notion of unconditional positive regard, when someone is loved and accepted without any conditions being attached. So, I know that when I go home, I'm going to be loved no matter what my grades are, no matter how good I am at that sport. No matter if I make a mistake, I know that I'm still going to be loved and accepted. And Roger said this is a really important part of someone developing a healthy personality, is having that unconditional positive regard. So, from Roger's theory, we have a type of therapy called person centered or client centered therapy. The idea is that an individual goes into therapy, and the environment that they're in is one that really sets the tone for them being able to grow. And there are three characteristics of this sort of climate: acceptance of the client by the therapist, that unconditional positive regard, a genuineness, meaning that an individual feels as though they can be open and transparent about their feelings, and also an empathy, a component of empathy where where the client is able to share and the therapist is able to mirror the feelings of the client. So when we get to therapy, we'll talk about some techniques, but it might involve a client talking about how they feel and then the therapist repeating back, kind of in their own words, what they believe the client is saying so the client can hear themselves and how they're feeling. And I have a short video that I'd like to share with you in class about empathy. But empathy is really, when someone comes to you with a problem, not just saying, well, yeah, but at least. Well, but at least this is going right for you, or at least that is going right for you. Empathy really involves like sitting with someone, coming down to where they are, and saying, I understand. I understand how you feel. I want you to think about this scenario, and it's one that we'll talk about a little more in class. So if we have a person, Kenya here, who's new to Abington, hoping to fit in and make new friends, what are examples of things that students at school could do if they were embracing the ideas of Carl Rogers? So what would each of these things look like in practice? Finally, the humanists give birth to this field of psychology that's called positive psychology. Positive psychology is a movement that focuses on everything that's good about us, as opposed to focusing on abnormality or, what's wrong with us. What they're focused on is how do we be happy? They're concerned with our emotional well-being. They're studying happiness and optimism and the importance of having social support, mental health. How can we function in a way that enables us to live our best lives?